Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Noel Casler podcast, episode 51. I'm back here with my main man, Jimmy Kennedy, LLJK, getting ready to break down the week's events. It's been another crazy week. The sun's out here on the East Coast, though, and it's going to be a warm weekend. And we're here to talk to you. We appreciate you coming back. Jimmy, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Noel. I do have some news to tell. Should I go ahead and tell the people?
Yeah, let the listeners know the exciting news, folks.
So guys, it's been one of the joys and honors of my life to be the EP of this podcast, but I've decided after a year that I'm going to step away. It's kind of become a toxic environment with media, with the way things are going. And I think in order for me to find the personal peace that I need to step away from the show, but it's been an absolute joy to this point to do it. And, I'll probably I'm still going to do my podcast and do some media things, but I've learned that it's not about the likes and it's not about the clout that you get. You got to find peace with yourself. And I'm hopeful to find that while I still can.
Yeah, you'll find it, buddy. And we appreciate all your help. And I know the listeners love listening to you. And so you don't want to be Joe Rogan anymore, huh? Because when we started, you were like, we're going to be the next Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, we're not.
No, JVK does not want to be the next JRE, so that's fine with me, man. Like, I've learned that we're only here for so much time and there's only so much love that we can give. And us doing a Zoom call, I try to explain it as many different ways as I could, but I think I'm going to be more impactful on a local level here in Indiana and trying to advocate for people with disabilities and trying to use my experience as opposed to just being angry at what's happening with things that I can't control,
Yeah, that's not for everybody,
Yeah.
Leave the anger to me, dude. I'm good at it. Us New Yorkers know how to do this, and look, it's like you can help people in your community. The internet is not the real world. It's great to have followers and support and stuff, but it's not real life. It's social media, and we're all addicted to it, and the algorithms are set up to make you addicted. You saw like the social dilemma, you know what I mean? These things are designed to keep sucking you in. Let me see who just liked that picture of me and my cat. You know what I mean? And we all do it. I do it, but it's certainly not healthy, and it's much more manipulated now than it ever was. And something like Twitter has completely changed just in the last few weeks, and I've done a lot of writing and meditating on that. And I'll get into that in a minute. Well, one thing I will suggest is prayer and meditation is a saying in the fellowship I'm in, but meditation is a great way to kind of find peace within. And there's apps, you don't have to go to Himalayas and live in a cave, And I've done that kind of stuff, not to the Himalayas. My dad lived in a cave in the Himalayas for a time in the 70s, but, I went to meditation retreats with Amma, and, I've studied a lot of Eastern stuff and yoga, but you can just sit there in your chair and practice breath coming in, breath coming out, breathe in love, breathe out peace. Say those words like a mantra in your mind and make a practice of it, make a habit of it, and your life will change and it'll fill with gratitude. And gratitude is what you want. Anger is a character defect. I flirt with it because it's part of my thing. And I know these people, and I know how hypocritical the media is and how much of this is a scam, even on the left, even on Twitter. You see people during the Super Bowl retweeting Charlie Kirk. Is Charlie Kirk okay? He's not okay. You've known he's a racist for years, but a lot of people are going to hit that like button when you tweet that. And then AOC is going to retweet it. And then it becomes this whole big thing. And then you wake up Monday morning and Charlie Kirk got free advertising that people were spending $10 million on, right? And everybody got angry, but then they said, oh, well, I'll check out your Substack or your latest article or whatever. Everybody's feeding on this stuff, and I get that. And I am too, even though this is free and I'm not asking you for anything. It costs money to come see a live show or buy a t-shirt, but none of this has ever been subscription based, hasn't been commercial driven. We're not asking for donations and panhandling digitally. If you like what I do, you know what I mean? If you like what I do, give to a local charity. That's what I say, and you're somebody who's had extraordinary circumstances in life that you've risen above. and that can inspire somebody else. There's a little Jimmy sitting in a classroom right now with a walker or whatever, wondering, if this scary world is going to deliver peace and, an opportunity to him. And you're somebody who's already achieved that at a young age. So why not do that? You know what I told you should do, right?
Yeah.
You should go back to school and learn how to be a teacher or something. You talk about your high school all the time. Go teach there. Get another degree. Also, that will give you job security, because the gig economy, especially for somebody with your circumstances, who's going to have a harder time hopping in a car and making it to 3 jobs in one day, those things that would give you like a pension or whatever, and some sort of security and health insurance. Those are valuable things, and not everybody's a good student, and you seem to be. So, don't feel bad about it. And not that you do, I'm just saying. And it's also, we were going to switch this up at 52 episodes anyway. So we made it, to almost a year. Yeah, I stopped the car rants. Last week was the 52nd one, because I don't want to brand Trump anymore. Anything I've told you about Trump, except for the stuff he did behind the scenes, you can read. It's all there in books. James Zirin wrote a great book about the 4,000 lawsuits he was in before he became president, right? And then it just broke, minutes before airtime. We're taping this on Friday, that the National Archives found classified documents in the materials he sent back to them that he took to Mar-a-Lago. Well, we knew that a week ago, right? It's made official this afternoon, but we already knew that. But everyone is breathlessly retweeting it. Do you know what I'm saying? And talking about it. And I'm not saying we should ignore that stuff, but it's good to be aware of sort of the echo chamber and the sphere of influence we're in, because it's damaging. It'll take you away from peace in your own life. And I'm not saying shut it out. What I'm saying is see it for what it is, and see how many people are addicted to just being contrary, right? People see a tweet and they just want to say something in defiance of that, or that the tweet didn't mention every particular point of view in the limited 280 characters or whatever it is.
Right.
I always get that, like, you forgot to mention this. I wasn't talking about the entirety of the thing. I was expressing my opinion based on something I was reacting to, in my own life that you didn't see,
Yeah.
And people just, they just want you're good at pointing this out. They want the opportunity, to hop on somebody with a larger following's tweet, because they know, a lot of my tweets will get 10,000 likes, 50,000 likes. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, you can tell when people are like, you're just looking to be the second guy under the tweet, and sort of hitchhike digitally on this thing with your defiant little, message. So, it's very toxic. And it's also been manipulated in recent weeks. Like the Russia's about to, invade Ukraine. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but by the time people hear this, we could be in a much different world come Monday morning, which is also why I kind of pulled back on the car rant stuff. All of this stuff is appeasement of Putin that Trump did. We lost 4 years. He invaded Ukraine territories 8 years ago, and we haven't been able to do anything about it. And we lost 4 years of any potential diplomacy on that subject, because Trump was owned by the guy, and was eating the interpreter's notes, and people are hurt, right? They're angry. So they're lashing out at everybody. And I've spoken about this before, but the left will eat itself. I have to block a lot of people, and a lot of those people are on the left, right? They just can't wait to attack each other. And there's a breakdown in civility. And I spoke about it this week, the other day, like yesterday, I had a tweet, like Twitter was never like a hotbed of compassion, but it's gotten worse in recent weeks. And some ladies like, you don't see all the pictures of dead pets and all the empathy that people give when they lose their loved ones, because you got a big following and you don't pay attention. So who are you to talk about Twitter, right? That's what a lady, she retweeted my tweet that I had to turn off comments. It said that. And it's like, first of all, why do you think a larger account makes you see less people on Twitter, right? Because I follow people too, but that was my point. Like, she just literally made my point, but had to angrily react to this, and go after me for being, and this was someone who follows me. You know what I mean? Right. Like, what is the point of that? I'm just giving you my point of view of the incivility I see in here. And it was in relation to, the quarterback who turned his back on a woman who fell off a stage, a 10-foot high stage, which I've seen happen more than once on shows, and I've seen stage managers lose their careers. There is nothing more dangerous than falling into a pit off of the stage. It's the number one hazard in live television, concerts, you name it. It's deadly, and she fell off backwards. Could have been a concrete floor, and she ended up fracturing her spine. And the quarterback was a total tool, right? He just turned his back and let his wife deal with it. He took a sip of water. He had no concern. And they were defending him like, oh, he was drunk, bro. What do you expect him to do? He might get sued, And it's a great example of how everybody reacts to everything from this point of division now, right? That's what Trump brought to this country. He divided a people, that were never completely united, but we used to have civility. There used to be something called civics. And when you're in Boy Scouts, they tell you to help a lady across the street and stuff and treat everybody like you're running into your granny or something. You know what I mean? And now people filter it like, oh, a liberal's probably liberals are probably mad at him because he fell off, because he didn't help her. So they come at it with this Joe Rogan Barstool Sports attitude. And that's what happened. That was a perfect example of obvious incivility. Being drunk at 2 p.m, 2 days after the Super Bowl isn't the excuse you think it is, right? They're supposed to be heroes and stuff. Not saying you shouldn't get drunk and celebrate, but they were acting like it's complete vindication. He's a drunken quarterback. Yeah, well, drunken quarterbacks do a lot of bad stuff to girls in college too. You know what I mean? Like, why are you acting like that's an excuse? But my point is that's how everybody initially reacts to that. And then they just attack each other online. And that's a weapon. That's weaponized stuff that's been manipulated, that these algorithms and, we've covered it ad nauseum, how the Trump campaign, worked with Putin in 2016 to target specific demographics and change their mind and turn them against fellow Americans. And it worked to the extent that people don't get vaccinated. A guy tried to open an airline door. He was on an airplane and he got up and tried to open the door on the airplane, a flight out of Oregon, I believe. And because he wanted fellow passengers to videotape his thoughts on vaccination. Like he knew it would go viral on TikTok or whatever. So he was going to open the door and let everybody get sucked out of the plane. I don't know if that really happens, but I don't want to see a motherfucker opening the plane door while we're in flight.
No,
Noel's a peaceful guy, but I'm going hard on you if I see you do that. But, that's my point. It's like everybody wants to be viral. This Canadian trucker imbroglio, which is not the right term for it because it's an occupation. It's a terrorist act. But, the guy who's behind it, the quote unquote leader is a racist asshole, beard bro pig. You've seen the guy and he's getting retweeted. He'll be famous. Joe Rogan got twice as much as we initially thought, right? We thought he got 100 million. He got 200 million to come to Spotify. That's because they knew the amount of algorithmic activity they would get off of a bald knucklehead saying racist, homophobic, what have you stuff every week. They know their business model. It's clicks and likes and subscribers. It's not humanity. And it's a scam. It's like cryptocurrency or something. It's a Ponzi scheme. Yeah, the big accounts will make money off of that, but everybody else gets sucked into the maelstrom and you lose your day-to-day life. You lose your ability to concentrate and read a book. When's the last time you sat down and read a book and didn't check your phone for 3 hours? You don't have to answer, but we all know, we probably don't do that as much as we once did. I got a stack of New Yorkers, they pile up around me because I'm always looking at my phone. So, that's a rant on that kind of stuff. I'm not saying I'm quitting social media. I need to be on there, and I got a comedy show coming up on June 7th at the City Winery Loft in New York City, in case you listeners are interested. I'm not disappearing either. And we'll switch up the format of this podcast because I think a year was like a first season. And I think we covered a lot of this dark stuff in this last year. But I think as a world and as a country, we're entering into different uncharted territory now. We're at the end of one era and we're entering another. We're in this sort of post-Trump years, not post-pandemic, even though everyone's acting like it's all over and they're lifting a mask mandate next week in California, which is insane, even in the schools. And in most of the country, but we're going to be on the other side of that. And anybody who tells you they know what it looks like is lying to you because nobody's been here before, and the echoes of what we've seen before do not bear well for freedom or democracy, right? We've seen a lot of this playbook in fascist regimes of the past, right? And that's why they use everything. The I can never say that word, iconography, iconography, right? They use all of Trump's symbols. Melania Trump, I read a letter of hers today. She had like a Nazi looking symbol. Why does Melania Trump have a seal? You know what I mean? Yeah. And all the Trump rallies use like Hitler looking eagles on top of globes and all this like toxically masculine BS because it polls well with these morons. So it's all kind of dangerous stuff. The things we do know are dangerous and the things we don't know are perhaps even more dangerous. And I'll shut up now, but I think social media seemed like a really good idea at the time, but I think it was like nuclear power or something. We didn't really realize how dangerous it is and what an effect it could have on all of our lives and how toxic it could be. And we're all so sucked into it now. It's almost like, what can you do? Especially in a pandemic. Right? Because you haven't left your house in a couple of years, right?
No, man. And, I was thinking about going out to greater Los Angeles area for a vacation just to try to get some sunshine on my face and take a week to gain some peace. But like you said, man, with that mask mandate getting lifted, that's pretty much that eliminates that option for me. Yeah. And, I also know somebody personally who went to the same college I did, who's from Ukraine. She's scared to death. There are people in her neighborhood that are training for war, and she originally went to the University of Indianapolis to be an occupational therapist and be the first in the country to offer those services to kids that needed it. Because in Ukraine, they hide people with disabilities. They don't want people with disabilities to be seen by the public. So, if we're getting to the core of the issue of why I did this podcast a year ago, I don't want the United States to turn into a place where people with disabilities are hidden. And minorities are scared to wear what they want to wear and say what they want to say. We're getting to that point, and I have to walk away while I still can and find some light where I can find it.
There you go. You'll be fine, Jimmy. You just got to, just do what you can do in your own life. Take care of your mom. You're the man of the house now. Get a job.
I'm worried about her too.
Yeah.
So,
but you're also from Indiana and you love Indiana, and that's a rare thing. I know a lot of you would like to live in the big city or whatever, but I'm telling you, man, there's nothing wrong with a place like Indiana and Indianapolis, and you got world-class arts, and education and things like that. It's not like you're in like Siberia or something. You know what I mean?
No, when it comes to Indiana, man, I've got a great spot. There's several hospitals that are close by. Indiana is one of the best places for like medical services. I've talked about it here on the show when my dad had cancer and he was going to get his esophagus surgery done in Indiana because the best guy in the world to do that surgery was at the IU hospital downtown. So for a place in the Midwest, I'm not going anywhere. It's scary that the people I thought I could depend on, that I grew up with, they aren't the same people that they were when I was a kid. They've changed fundamentally,
Yeah, well, then that's what happened. That's what MAGA did. I went to a school called Lakeland High School in northern Westchester. Okay. And I just saw an article yesterday that Jamal Bowman, who's the congressman from Yonkers, which extends, his district extends to cover where I went to high school, posted this article that at like a school board meeting the other day, they were attacking the superintendent and using the N-word and attacking Jewish people and making Germany jokes to them and all kinds of racial epithets because they didn't want CRT being taught, which is insane because they don't teach it in high schools. And like, I know these people, I know the kind of people that would get up and do that because I've had to see their Facebook groups and all this in the last few years, and there were some smart, compassionate people I went to high school with, and I'm still friends with those ones. But the rest of them, dudes I've known for 40 years, are complete racists and complete anti-vaxxers and NRA nutbags. And they're not teaching CRT. You live in Putnam Valley. You know what I mean? It's all white people. There was like 2 black people in my high school, one of which was one of my best friends, and the other was this great dude, and they were liked. It wasn't a racist thing, so you're right. Something has changed. These people lived in homes where they heard racist stuff around their kitchen tables, as we've covered in the past. That's the part of white suburban America that nobody wants to talk about. This stuff was all there sort of underneath the surface, and Trump just branded it and made it okay. And then a whole bunch of GOP guys and girls ran in behind him and sort of made it their platform, right? The platform is Donald Trump and we're racist and we have guns, right? And anti-CRT, and now it's insane. And you feel sorry for anybody who has to deal with that every day. And, Joy Reid, is a great person who speaks out about that kind of stuff. And, she's hurting today. You can tell on Twitter, they let the cop off who killed a man. She got 2 years, including time served. So she'll do 16 months in jail and $1,000 fine for taking a man's life. The innocent kids in Central Park 5, that Trump took out an ad and asked to have them hanged, that got accused of a crime they didn't commit, a horrible crime that happened right in my neighborhood in New York City. I wasn't there at the time. I was up in Westchester in high school, but I've mentioned it before. I ride by where this horrible crime happened, when I'm on my bike in the city every day, and I say a prayer for the woman who was the victim, but the kids were innocent. They were victims of racism, right? And they went to jail for a lot longer than this woman's going to go to, who claimed, she thought her pepper spray was she mistook her taser or her pepper spray for a gun and ended a man's life. Apparently the judge was like so empathetic. The judge looked like she was going to break into tears having to sentence, this person. I don't know if the judge was a woman or a man, but that's justice in a white judicial system. And it feeds into the whole Trump stuff. There's a reason Trump is still walking around, and there's a reason, like, now that he and his kids have to testify for Attorney General Letitia James in New York, the New York AG, which is, by the way, a civil case. So don't think you're going to see a perp walk coming out of that. Everyone's like, they're going to jail. No, they're not. They might lose their company and stuff. And hopefully maybe someday they'll go to jail. If they were Black, if President Obama had taken classified documents when he left the White House, there would be protests in the streets trying to lock him up. And let's be real, Trump's been given every benefit of the doubt his entire life, and he's been a criminal his whole life. He built the goddamn tower he lives in with mob money and gave an apartment to a mob mole's girlfriend, the mob mole, John Cody's girlfriend, who was head of the Teamsters, who let the concrete get poured because he was in business with Fat Tony Salerno, right? Big Paulie of the Gambino, Paul Castellano, the guy that Gotti killed a few years later, right? Those guys were who Trump went into business with, because his dad was a Genovese crime family. He built in Queens and Brooklyn. And Trump was a young scion, brash dude who wanted to branch out and build a tower in Manhattan. And his dad was like, that's not our territory, meaning like that's not our 5 family that we're covered by. But Trump went into business, with the Gambinos and built this tower. And how he had to do it was he had to give an apartment away to this guy's girlfriend. And this guy was married. This was like his mistress, right? And she had no job, no means of income. Trump signed a document to get her a mortgage of $3 million. And they gave her this penthouse suite right underneath the triplex that he lives in on the 58th floor, which is really the 48th floor because he lied about the height, right? But he gave this woman an apartment, with no job, like basically, a prostitute, a mobster's girlfriend, right? He gave her the apartment. About 2 weeks after she moved in, there's a knock on the door and it's Trump guys. And they're like, oh, we're here to, put in the phone lines in the intercom system and stuff. And she's like, what? I think I'll call the phone company for that. No, thanks. And she told her boyfriend, John Cody, the Teamster guy, who's, later got in trouble and murdered or something. He was a mob guy, but he was like, no, never let them in again. He's a spy trying to wire the apartment, so the whole place, my point is the whole tower was collecting compromise. That's what Trump does, right? But now he's got an entire network talking about how Hillary Clinton is was trying to spy on him as president, and when he was running his campaign, and this insane stuff that was mentioned 200 times alone yesterday on Fox News, that Kevin McCarthy is tweeting about. You think they're going to be tweeting about it tonight or mentioning it on Fox News that Trump stole classified documents? Stole them. They weren't his to take. And God knows what, like, Jared Kushner took in his valise on the way out the door, right? How many copies of top secret stuff did Jared Kushner pass off to MBS? or the Israelis or somebody, anybody who would pay him, or Putin. It's dangerous. You don't mess with the world like that. You don't let like basically a high addled narcissistic idiot run the world for 4 years. And now you're seeing the result of that, right? Now you're seeing a very large nation. Ukraine is the size of the whole Northeast all the way to Chicago. I don't think people realize how big it is. Like from Maryland to Chicago up to like New Hampshire or whatever. If you superimpose it on a map, it's a big chunk of land. It's a lot of people. Millions of people could be flooding out of there come Monday. It's a terrifyingly disorienting and disruptive to peace in the world. And it all happened because a white guy didn't get held accountable his whole life because he was greasing the palms of other corrupt people. And everybody wanted to make a buck, and everybody was sort of comfortable demonizing Black folks and immigrants, being like, I'm not really a racist. I just want to make sure my less than adequate kid can get into the right school and, country club and white shoe law for him and play firm and plays nice. And, you're alive at an interesting time, Jimmy, because you're seeing a lot of the house of cards sort of fall down, and the true sort of like skeleton of the United States. You're seeing how this thing was designed, and it's always been the same. It's always been the same scam. It's like rich, wealthy people controlling most of the money, letting less wealthy white people resent immigrants and Blacks. That's the gig. 3.7 million more children are in poverty today than were in December, 6 weeks ago, because Joe Manchin was bought out by the Koch brothers and he killed the child tax credit. The one bright spot we've had in years of just horrific, a shameful, public stage kind of Americanism democracy, right? We went from like the leading beacon of hope in the world to like a laughing stock. Nobody respects America anymore. Nobody wants to go there. You're not sending your kids here, and now it's spreading into Canada, and cruelty is the point. To bring it back to that quarterback, it almost exemplified that attitude. Well, I got mine. Oh my God, she fell off a thing. I'm just going to turn around. Who does that? Who turns their back on watching somebody fall 10 feet off a stage? But I'm saying that's what Manchin did, right? Hey, it's not my problem. They're probably spending the extra money on drugs. That's what he said. That was his excuse for killing it, right? While he's driving a Maserati and living on a houseboat in Georgetown with tens of millions of dollars in the bank, and his daughter raising the price on EpiPens 700%. It's highway robbery. It should be $30 a shot. And that's what Biden had in the legislation that he killed and that Kristen Sinema killed. And I'll give another example. When you speak out on something like that same thing, how we're addicted to contrarianism. If I point that out on Twitter right now, if I say that, I'll get people going, yeah, but you're not mentioning the 50 GOP. You're not telling the truth. It was also the GOP. Yeah, well, no shit. But I'm not even thinking they're going to do the right thing. They're the ones who threw in their lot with a drug addict and a diaper for 4 years who was trying to burn down the Capitol. I know they're not going to do anything. But as Democrats, we spent 7 months trying to appease Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and figure out what they want while she curtsies with, Mitch McConnell on the floor of the Senate, and ignores questions and doesn't have a town hall. They're the ones who wasted our time. And I know you know this because I said it before. I said it in car rants. They're chaos agents. Their job is to run out the clock until now, right? Until things get so messed up, till every GOP candidate is posing with a gun. You know what I mean? Till racism is out in the open, till, crypto coins are debilitating our economy because all the beard bros that have been listening to Rogan and Elon Musk, who, by the way, tweeted out a picture of Hitler yesterday, comparing vaccine mandates to Hitler. Justin Trudeau. He compared Justin Trudeau to Hitler in this offensive meme, which was a picture of, like a glamour shot of Adolf Hitler that he later deleted, right? But that guy's got tens of millions of young, dumb American morons thinking they're going to be rich on Dogecoin and stuff. You know what I mean? And be hanging out smoking a blunt with Elon Musk on their way to Mars. It ain't going to happen that way. They're going to die behind a 7-Eleven digging in there looking for half a banana that somebody threw out when the world collapses. Just to hype you up with that image, Jimmy. I know that's what you come here for, right? Did you ever read The Road, Cormac McCarthy?
I haven't yet, man, but I'll put it on the list. I'll have plenty of time. Yeah,
that's what you need to do, bro. Jump into books like deep thought, 280 characters. Like that's what's popular now. And it's been popular for me, but it's not real thought. It's not real dialogue. It's not deep dives. We need deep dives. We need to explore art. We need to look at paintings and understand what a painter was trying to say. Guernica is a great piece of art that, talked about the horrors of World War II. We need contemplative, meditative thought and healing and peace, not more agitation, and quick fixes and adrenaline hits, because we're all cyber junkies at this point, right? And it's why I told you to read The Power of Now or A New Earth. He talks about the pain body. Our footprints online are like pain bodies, right? It doesn't activate your higher self, and this is generalizations. Obviously, when you see the cool pictures of the monkey riding on top of the goat or something like that, makes you feel better, and lowers your blood pressure, right? Right. But the next scroll is going to be some horror, some 9-year-old that got shot in Texas last night sitting in the back of a car by a stray bullet or something. Do you know what I mean? It's not gonna, you're not gonna reach an equilibrium that way.
Well, and there's just not enough timeline cleansers out there with the BS that's available now. And you were talking about the GOP being chaos agents, man. All the BS that they're talking about with inflation, they didn't show up to the banking meeting to try to make it better. Like you said, they're running out the clock, so they're not showing up to meetings and then blaming Democrats for their lack of action. The GOP has become a terrorist organization at this point. Yeah, I would like to think that there are some better angels in there, but even Cheney and the other that are on the committee voted with Trump 90% of the time. Like, we need new ideology fundamentally in this country across the board, or it's going to be consequences for everybody. I think that's the thing too. Like, it's not just racism, it's racism that's leading to the climate crisis. Like, it's all interconnected. That's the other thing I've learned. Everything is connected to everything else.
Absolutely.
In some way.
Because it's all one organism, Jimmy. If you look at it from the big picture, the earth is one living, breathing thing. And we're just a part of that. It's like I told you at the beginning of this, season that we're about to end, it's like a fish, and all those scales on the fish are individual scales, right? And sometimes you'll see the sun come through the water and you'll see a fish turn and you see a rainbow on the side of its body, and that's all those different scales working together and reflecting back the beauty and warmth of the sun, right? They all have their purpose and their meaning. And that's how the planet is. Any bug, plant, animal, or people, climate, or culture, they're all supposed to be here. And they all have a right to be here. And we have to work in concert with each other. And it's a basically healthy thing. When it's getting exploited by certain people for their own wealth, the balance gets shifted. And now we've gotten to past the breaking point, because the climate is the big issue. None of this stuff is going to matter when the tidal waves start like rolling in, which they're there. We had a storm last night that shook the house, bro. It tore down trees in Long Island. I'm heading out to Long Island for a week tomorrow, and it's like, these superstorms are all the time now. We have a pandemic that didn't get people to slow down. I was in the hospital on Tuesday night. I hurt my knee cross-country skiing this year, and I had a Baker's cyst, like water behind your knee, and it burst. So my whole lower knee is like, my whole lower leg from my knee to my foot is completely swelled up, Jimmy. I can barely walk. I'm using a crutch and stuff. I keep that stuff personal. Now I'm telling everybody on the podcast, but my point, I was sitting in Lenox Hill Hospital, one of the great hospitals, in the world. And I'm sitting there, and all these people are smiling and compassionate, these nurses and these nurses' aides and these doctors, and I was like, they're still like full of like caring and joy. And I was sitting there waiting for a while. I had to get sonograms and like tests on my knee. And I was like, what has the last 2 years of their lives been like? Because they're in the epicenter of the first wave. We're talking 77th and Park Avenue, Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, like where people were banging pots and pans. If you ever saw that on the news, like, oh, right. That's where this was happening. I mean, this was the first wave of the stuff. And, those guys have been through war war, biological sort of warfare, and they're still smiling. They're still like sort of reaching out their hand and helping people. And it was just an interesting paradox. It was almost more peaceful in the hospital than it is out in the streets, kind of, you know? And it's like, how could their work be politicized? You know, and I also started thinking about that, like, you know, it's the Upper East Side. So you're not getting a lot of anti-vaxxer like idiots that we hear about spitting in nurses' faces and stuff. But can you imagine that? You know, like if somebody did that to me as a nurse, I'd be walking in there every 5 seconds and jabbing them with a needle, like, oh, gotta take some more blood, bro. Sorry.
Yeah,
right now,
bad.
I'm gonna take it out of your neck right now. You know what I mean? Let me tell you a story on that. It's kind of funny. Yeah. I spent some time at NIH. I spent a month there, okay, 17 years ago. And you know, I was that's why I went to rehab, as National Institutes of Alcoholism and Abuse, right? And it was wonderful. It saved my life. It introduced me to the fellowship that I participate in this day. But I was part of this protocol, right? This experimental protocol. And they noticed, like when they took blood from me and stuff, that I didn't really mind. You know, it didn't bother me. I have a high tolerance for pain, right? I'm Irish. And so well, there you go, buddy. And so one of these tests they did on me was like a cortisol test, where they injected me with cortisol, which floods your body essentially with adrenaline, you know, and they were measuring my fight or flight instinct, right? And they sort of had to strap me down, inject me with this stuff. And when the guy's giving me the needle, the doctor who had been taking care of me the whole time, like the nurse comes in, the male nurse, and pulls out a stopwatch, because if they give it to you too fast, like your heart will explode. And this doctor who'd been joking around with me in weeks previous was like dead serious. And he's pressing the plunger, you know, with the thing into the IV drip. And the guy's like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, right? And he's pressing this drip. And I'm like, oh, crap, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Like, these guys are sweating. What are they giving to me? And they're like, how do you feel? And I'm like, I feel fine, you know? And I got a little flushed and stuff. But my point is, the rest of the experiment was they were going to take blood every 15 minutes for like 4 hours. They came in with a case, like a rack of blood vials, like 40 of them, right? And they're like, hey, you know, we have a patient like in another ward, another part of the hospital, that's super afraid of needles. And we want to try like some sort of conversion type therapy or whatever. Can we have her come sit in here and watch them take blood out of you every 15 minutes? And I was like, yeah, no problem. Like, it's a teaching hospital, you know, Johns Hopkins is part of the thing. So I'm sitting there, and the girl hung for like a half an hour, was like, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? She couldn't even like deal with it. They were taking so much blood. But these guys were angels. You know, they saved my life. I got a spinal tap twice when I was in there too. And it was crazy, you know. But you know, my point in all that is like, how are you going to make somebody in a hospital an enemy? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Whenever I've been in a position for that sort of compassion and care, I'm just like, thank you. You know, because I know I'm almost cheating the system to even be in there, right? Because health insurance isn't a given. You know, I work as a freelancer my entire adult life. Till Obamacare, I didn't have insurance as an adult. You know, sometimes when I'd work at a company or whatever, and it was also my idea of hell, like having to stay at a job for the insurance. You know, people shouldn't have to do that. It should be separate. It should be a human right that you get as a citizen, and you should be able to go and pursue whatever career you want to pursue. You shouldn't have to work at Starbucks to get health insurance. And that ties into what I was talking about last week about robbing people of excellence. That's what this economic system is also designed to do. And I'll segue from that into the Super Bowl, right? Because everybody loved this Super Bowl. This was the most loved halftime show since the one I did with Prince, no question. And I did probably 12, 13 of them in a row, you know, up until Minneapolis. I did, you know, from Miami to Minneapolis, 11, 12, I don't know how many that is consecutively. Nobody ever said it was a great show. There was Springsteen, you know, Prince. Everything else was like, yeah, whatever. You know, what was up with the dancing shark? Like, you know, like Madonna sucks. Like, it was never like, that was amazing. This was truly joyful, truly amazing. My friends that were still there, you know, that are still doing the gig, had a blast. You know, they're African-American women that I've worked with in life for 20 years. So I was so happy for them, you know, to be on the field there with that talent and see everybody killing it and joyful. and realize this is great music, because it is. And once again, how is it viewed through this lens of like, oh, that's what woke liberals like, right? That was the tweet I referenced earlier, where somebody like, this shouldn't be on TV, they're twerking, right? Trump had his daughter giving him lap dances when she was 13. You're offended by professional dancers? Do you know what I mean? Like, go.
Mary J. Blige, she's 51 years old and she's able to perform better than most artists would in their prime. And Eminem, good for him taking a knee, even though the NFL said not to. Like, when you're on a stage that big, you do whatever the hell you want. You're paying the NFL to perform. At least that's the way it used to work, that the artists would pay the NFL so that they could perform. Yeah, it's, again, even football, I've talked about it, like sports used to be the one institution that people were kind of together on, despite politics. And because of today's climate, even the Super Bowl was divisive, and it divided America.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about. That instant thing, this filter that we've all developed, this branding of, I'm on this side of thing. I got this big truck with a bumper sticker. You can tell what somebody's going to be all about just by looking at them. And that's not supposed to be how it works. You're supposed to judge the content of their character, not the color of their skin or their beard. Like, I'm struggling with this beard, Jimmy, because I look like every asshole I see on the viral videos. I was like, I'm shaving this thing. I don't want to look like a Canadian trucker, and I only grew it because, the Omicron, I had to cancel shows in January. So like, why waste the shaving cream? Because like you said, things are products, right? They're expendable. Use as little as you can. I'll tell you how, I don't even know if I should do it on this show, Jimmy. I'll skip it, but you can there's no limit to how, once you decide you want to save this planet and not make it worse environmentally, there's no limit onto how you can do that in every moment of your life. You will discover new ways once you start thinking about it, and ways that would seem crazy. This is how crazy I am. If I'm throwing out a tea bag, I squeeze the water out of the tea bag before I put it in the trash can, because the water is extra weight that's going to be in that trash can, that trash bag that's going to go on a truck, that's going to use fuel to carry it away from my home, right? That's a micro level of this sort of thing. And that's where we'll have to get if we really want to save this place, right? You wash your hair, everybody puts a massive dollop of shampoo in your hand and stuff. Use less, consume as little as you can now, because that'll create space for other things. We don't need all this stuff. That's the other, just like how you said everything's related. That's the other problem, is that this consumerist society, I'm going to get a whole brand new set of clothes from Uniqlo or Primark or wherever, all these places that have popped up where you can get all this great stuff for nothing. You're like, oh, look, a down coat for $40. Shouldn't cost $40 for a down coat. You know what I mean? You'd be better off buying a nice wool jacket that cost you $200-300 and lasted 20 years, right? Than this disposable clothes. And if you think, well, I'll just give it to charity, there's too many clothes already on the planet. That stuff's all going over to Africa, ending up on beaches and in these piles and desecrating these countries. I think Guyana or one of these countries is like, don't send us any more stuff. We have enough. We don't want any more of your crappy clothes, because these companies just keep churning it out. And like, nothing leaves this planet really that you make that is not a natural biodegradable material. Right? Every plastic bottle that's ever been on this earth is still on this earth in some form. It may be little tiny pieces floating around the ocean, but those little pieces go into the fish, and they go into your food. So, it's the theory I always talk about, and I'll shut up, but it's like putting Drano down your drain. Where do you think it's going? Where do you think it's just magically going to some Drano special area in the world that it's not going to come back and give you God knows what disease, right? People didn't have autism when I was a kid, right? So I don't know what causes that, but ultimately it's probably going to be something in the atmosphere, or all this cancer or whatever. I'm not trying to start conspiracy theory. I'm just saying, like, there's results of all this like sort of toxicity in this world, and when I watch people put on fingernail polish, like women, I'm like, how are you sitting in the bathroom putting on fingernail polish? Do you smell what that smells like? Do you think there's any part of that thing that was made by a petrochemical company that is good for you? You know what I mean? All this post-industrial consumerism has only been around for 100 years too. That's the other thing. You know, in the 150 years, basically since the Industrial Revolution, or just take automobiles, right? You know, what, 125 years or so, whatever. Like just in cars, think of what we've done to the planet, just with automobiles alone, right? We've paved 80% of the world, right? Everywhere has got a road. Everybody's got exhaust. Everybody's buying a new car every 2 or 3 years, right? Because you're seeing commercials that show you low financing. You could drive out of here today, you know? Keep buy a decent car and keep it. I'm in the same car for 7, 8 years.
Mine's a 2003, man.
Yeah.
2003 Pontiac Vibe. It's still running.
There you
it's
go,
it's an efficient car, dude.
Dude,
you know?
That's what I'm talking about, man. You know, I have this other theory. It's like, I love a pair of boots that have been resold, man. You know, I got 20, 25-year-old leather boots, man. I want something that's going to last. I mean, look in the background, you know, it's like old wood, old guitars, you know, that's a couple 100-year-old tall boy. I like old stuff, you know, this disposable crap is just, you don't need it. We don't need all this stuff. And when you figure out you don't need stuff, it makes room for other things. Talk to wise old people, and that's what they'll tell you. Don't sweat the small stuff. You need less and less. You know, you need healthcare and you need shelter and food, and, you know, you need things. I'm not saying that, but, you know, you don't need to keep trying to fill the hole.
Well, and, you know, I've talked about Dad on here. He was a self-employed musician. You know, it wasn't like he had a backup plan. You know, that was kind of his pursuit in this world, was being a musician. And he was excited when he turned 65 because he was like, I get Medicare. I get to have some insurance, you know, like it was a huge deal. And just as far as like the consumer capitalism and the trash that gets created, a simple example that Chooch used to bring up, and I was laughing with Mom about it. We would go to White Castle, which is a Indiana staple. If you haven't had White Castle in Indiana, I'd recommend
I'm from New York. Where do you think it's from, dude? Queens.
Oh, okay. But you know, Dad would always be like, why does White Castle create so much trash with, you know, having a box for every slider, a box for every set of fries, not counting the environmental disaster it was to cook the food, just the plastic to store it in, you know, I mean, all that adds up. And I watched a documentary in college about consumer capitalism and how when you have 5 different kinds of cookies, that's 5 different types of packaging that gets thrown away. Like, we need less options as Americans, not just better choices, but less options from companies.
Yeah, well said. Your dad was a smart guy to be that forward thinking, you know, and the packaging, I'll go into the grocery store, I'll see 2 ears of corn peeled, wrapped in plastic on a bed of styrofoam, right? On a styrofoam tray. Like, it came in a wrapper, right? God made it in a wrapper. It literally has a husk that will keep it fresher and allow it to breathe, right? Those examples, become more and more aware of those things, you know, and this is for our listeners. This isn't just between us, you know, this is a conversation for the people that are listening, you know, like, we all want to keep on keeping on, right? And we all get overwhelmed, especially on social media and stuff. And it's easy to get hopeless about this, but you don't have to be hopeless. You have to bring it back to the present moment, you know, and say, what is my action doing right now? Like, am I making this world a better place, you know, for the next generations, or am I making it worse off? You know, do I really need this thing right now? Do I really need it on 80 degrees in January in my house so I can walk around in a t-shirt? Why not put on a sweater and make it 68 degrees? Because you're burning oil. You're burning these limited resources that are destroying the planet. You know, and the irony is it's also so cold because of climate change, right? It wasn't as cold as it. We just came out of a cold snap. It's warm today, but, you know, it was 20, 15, 10 degrees basically for a month here. It wasn't like that, you know, when I was in high school 30 years ago. So anything you can do in the moment to make it a better place, that stuff creates its own inertia. You feel better for doing it. It's like when you practice yoga or meditation or exercise or a craft, you know, like doing art or playing music or something that's sort of really like you're only doing it for the joy of doing it, right? It's not the results. It's not the likes. It's not the, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to get all this money. You know, just do it for the joy of doing it while you're here on this planet. and noticing like, oh, it's a beautiful day out. It's sunny. The birds are singing, because you're here for a blink of an eye. You might as well enjoy it as much as you can, because ultimately it is pretty frustrating and painful. That's the other thing that the Buddha talked about. Everybody's trying to resist pain. Life is painful. Maybe make space for it and accept it. I'm not saying seek it out, but the avoidance of pain is what causes a lot of these problems. Everybody wants to be comfortable all the time, instead of sitting with pain, and if we all got more present, there'd be a lot less pain in the world, because people running from their own pain and acting out on their own fears cause problems and pain for other people. Joe Manchin is letting kids go hungry this weekend and for the rest of their childhoods, probably, because there's no hope of this thing being revived, as far as I can tell, at least at the moment, because he's worried that he doesn't have enough, right? Or he's going to let down his benefactors, these coal companies, that he either owns or is purchased by, let alone the Koch brothers and what they might be able to do to him. That's all fear. We don't have to live in fear. We have to live in harmony.
I've talked about it here on the show before. One of the things that I tried to do early on as a kid was volunteer, and I started a charity wrestling event where kids got to dress up as professional wrestlers and be a professional wrestler for the day as the event. But I promise you, just having been around folks who have tried to make this world a better place, the more that you worry about elevating the vibration for somebody else, the less you worry about yourself. And then through that, you become better. So, my suggestion to try to counterbalance all the negative energy is do something positive within your own community. And we've talked about it throughout here. And thankfully, we've talked about it here on the show too, that my generation is pretty hip to like farmers markets and community gardens. There are good things happening. You just have to seek it out and find it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of good things happening, which is the other part of it, is like, when you're on social media all the time, it can seem like everything is awful, and it is on a big macro sense, right? But like, not everybody's meant to look at all the world's problems all the time, like that's not for everybody. I sometimes feel like I have a glimpse at the big picture, and it informs what I try to do creatively, so I can kind of see and point out trends, and I don't mind looking at it, like some people have to, be on point and on guard. I'm not equating myself from the real people that do that, but I'm saying if it comes naturally to you and can feed your other talents, then do it. But if it's causing you pain, find something that uses your specific skill in service of somebody else, and you'll be happy. You'll never work a day in your life if you're using what you were put on this earth and these gifts you were given to enrich somebody else's life. You got it all figured out, and the sooner you figure that out in life, the better, and the more rewarding your life is going to be. And I saw you have your dad's t-shirt on right now. I thought of your dad last night. I watched the Summer Soul documentary, and you mentioned Mary J. Blige. I've worked with Mary J. Blige a ton, ton back in the 90s and stuff, and Eminem and all those kind of guys, Snoop Dogg forever. I can tell you crazy, funny Snoop Dogg stories. He's hilarious, right? But, and Mary's incredible. But I watched that documentary, and the tragedy of that, and Questlove, Amir did an incredible job, and I hope he gets the Oscar. But the fact that wasn't seen until now. You heard about Woodstock your whole life, right? Which is pretty simplistic musically. Like, it wasn't as fun as they all make it out to be. And I lived in Woodstock as a kid with my dad. Like, I knew Michael Lang, rest his soul, who just passed away. I worked for Crosby, Stills and Nash. I'm named after Hendrix's bass player. Trust me, I'm deeply entrenched, as a product of the Woodstock generation. I was born in 71, so it obviously happened before I was born. But I lived under that shadow. And as I was saying last week, I grew up in a Black neighborhood as a little kid, in a mixed neighborhood, which was the best blessing in my life, to be honest with you. As I look back I'm turning 51 next month. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. Having a best friend who was from Palestine and Guatemala and DC, and seeing how we were all similar. We were all sitting there eating our Fruit Loops and putting on our, onesies and watching, cartoons in the morning, Bill Cosby or whatever. But anyway, Look, my point is, we'd see the Woodstock documentary, you'd see the Beatles stuff, you'd see all this stuff. We didn't see Mahalia Jackson. We didn't see Mavis Staples. We didn't see Sly and the Family Stone. The performances on that thing were epic. They were so next level to any performance at Woodstock. Hate on me all you want. From a musical standpoint alone, it was completely sophisticated. Your dad would have dug it, because I don't know if you watch it yet. It's all horn sections, there's a house orchestra. It's the best, tightest, stuff you've ever seen. It's just incredible music.
Wow.
And it's Black excellence and it's Black joy. And we live in a country that tried to hide that. This film sat in a basement for 50 years. That's insane. Because it could have inspired so many kids in my generation, in the 70s, if that thing was shown, if they showed that in classrooms, if they showed that on PBS and stuff, you'd be like, oh, my music is good. It's not just the Beatles and the white guys with the long hair at Woodstock that mattered in the 60s. They weren't the only ones opposed to Vietnam, and these guys were saying stuff that is so poignant today. There's a segment in the film, it's a documentary, so I'm not ruining, a drama for you, but there's a segment, it is the same summer that we landed on the moon. And they're asking all these guys in Harlem, how do you feel about the moon landing? And they're like, it's bullshit. There's kids starving and you're wasting money to go jump on the moon for 5 seconds. Spend that money here. And they're right. You know what I mean? But you grow up, and I'm not dissing on NASA. Don't hate on me. My point, my mom worked for NASA for a time in the 70s. She would put the punch cards in those big computers that took up a whole room. Didn't last long, but I went with her, once or twice to work.
Cool.
And, but anyway, my point is, they were like, we're dying. You're sending Black folks to Vietnam to get killed. Our neighborhood is ravaged by heroin and our children are starving. And you want to know how I feel about some white dude landing on the moon?
Right.
It was the same stuff we're saying now with Elon Musk and all these guys. Jeff Bezos trying to go to the moon every 5 minutes, or Mars or whatever, right? It's insane. People are going hungry. You know how many kids were involved in the child tax credit? 61 million children in households in this United States received benefits from that bill. 61 million kids didn't have enough to eat until they got this extra 250 or whatever it was per child, this credit. Think about that in the context of somebody trying to fly to Mars, or to go outside the atmosphere for 30 seconds, in a penis rocket and land back on Earth, and CNN covers it breathlessly for 10 hours, right? They don't cover breathlessly the 61 million children living in poverty, just like they didn't cover it in 69. They'll cover the riots. They'll cover that Harlem burns down after Dr. King gets assassinated. They don't cover, the frustrations that lead to that. Or if they do cover it, it's from an antagonistic viewpoint. These guys are the enemy. Look how dangerous and scary this all is. No, it's just people trying to dance, get enough food, love each other, and enjoy life. That's what all people want. That's all anybody is basically trying to do. At a core level. There's always psychopaths. And the problem is when those psychopaths are white and put on a suit and a tie, they get away with being a psychopath for a lot longer. And I'll wrap up this episode now in this season, a year of these episodes. That's what I was telling you about Trump. He got away with this stuff because he was a white guy. He was a psychopath when he was in elementary school. He was punching his teachers. They sent him to rich kid reform school, military school. They hid his school records because he couldn't read. And he had behavioral issues. He tried to throw his high school roommate out of a window. He ripped out his own wife's hair and raped her, the mother of his children. Okay. This was all documented in many, many years before he was allowed to run for president, when he was a known sexual predator with over 200 accusations. Right. Yeah. There's there's 26 women who, came out during the campaign. But if you tie up all the instances, and that's a fraction. I know women personally who aren't counted on that, who were groomed by him at 12 and ended up at Epstein's house. But he had a suit and tie and a myth that he was great and he'd bought all this stuff. And if you like him, you'll get to buy a bunch of stuff too. And you'll get a hot supermodel wife, and you'll get to not educate or empathize yourself but you'll get to rail against somebody else, the other, the demon, the immigrant, the Hillary Clinton, the liberals, the educated folks. So it's all a scam. It's all a scam. And it's a scam that a lot of people can make money off of on both sides of the equation. MSNBC, CNN never made more money than they did during the Trump era.
To reference Woodstock, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. That was one of Jimi Hendrix's best quotes. It all could have been so much better. You know, I've said this before. It's kind of like watching a train go down the tracks and you're seeing it crash. You know, I was born in 94. A lot of this was before my time, but again, we have to seek out the good. We have to try and find it in an environment that's this dark, and don't get distracted by the bullshit. Everybody knows Trump is a criminal at this point. Like, I don't know. And I'm going to try and find peace where I can, because I keep going back to, and I've seen it with my family firsthand. We're only here for so long. So try to make this experience as enjoyable and as peaceful as you can.
Well, there you go, Jimmy. That's a good way to leave it. You know, come back and say hi to us. You know, the viewers of the show are going to miss you. So you come back and say hi to them. Let us know how you're doing. Let them know now where they can find you until then, or, you know.
You can find me at jbkonair.com. You can search the podcast JBK on Air anywhere that you get your podcasts. And I would also recommend, if you like my podcast, buy my mom's book, My Perfect Son Has Cerebral Palsy. Kind of chronicles the beginning of when I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and what my mom and dad were feeling at the time. And if there's somebody out there that has a child with a disability and you're looking for some guidance as to handle that, it's a love story. You know, there's happy pictures in here. So it's not like the typical medical guides that you see. You know, my mom is the light and love of my life. So I would recommend buying a copy of that book if you feel compelled.
Well, there you go. And you can find that on Jimmy's Twitter. He's got a link to it in his bio. And boy, the ladies are going to love you now, James.
Oh, yeah. You got a whole treasure trove of baby pictures to enjoy in my absence. So
one of them just said on YouTube last week, they were, you were too young for her, you know?
Yeah, I know.
She was interested. She was basically saying, hey.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't disclose how old she was. You know, we don't know that yet. But hey, I appreciate the love and support of all the fans. It's really, that's been the other joy of this, is getting to meet all the people that I've gotten to meet. You know, I didn't think that many people were listening out there. You know, when you do this thing as a career, you kind of go in blind and just try your best. But to actually get a reaction from some folks and maybe raise their vibration a little bit, it was a really cool experience to get to do this for a year, you know.
Well, thanks for being a part of it, and shout out to those fans. Sarah Beth got a t-shirt this week, so I hope I sent it out on Monday priority, Sarah Beth, so hopefully you're enjoying that now as you listen to episode 51, end of season 1 of the Noel Casler podcast with my main man, Jimmy Kennedy. I will be back next week, and I'm going to start bringing in, you know, I'm bringing some friends and some guests from time to time, but I'll be back here with the, you know, with the normal Noel stuff every week. So take care of yourselves. The car rants, I'll come back. I just want to talk about other issues besides Trump. That was the thing. They were called Trump truths. And then Trump announced yesterday that his social media tweets were going to be called truths. Trump truth, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you stealing it, you know, from me? Yeah. And it's a joke. He's not stealing it from me, but I don't even want the cross contamination. Do you know what I'm saying? Now that he's using that term, and who knows if that thing will get off the ground, but I think 52 weeks, a year worth of Trump stuff is enough. There's nothing I can tell you about him that I haven't already told you or isn't on the YouTube page where all 52 car rants can be located, and all the episodes of this podcast, especially the ones with Jimmy. So when you're lonely, ladies, and you want to see a little LLJK, you know where to go. YouTube, Noel Casler channel. Until then, be well, be safe. Could be a tense week. I hope you all keep an even keel and your eyes on peace. All right. So until next time, say goodbye, Jimmy.
Take care, folks. Love you. See you next time.
There you go. They love you too, Jimmy. Peace.